Welcome to this journey through one of the most disturbing cases recorded in the history of the Soviet Union. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments from where you are watching us and the exact time at which you are listening to this narration. We are interested to know to what places and at what moments of the day or night these documented accounts reach. In 1965, during the height of the space race, the Soviet Union maintained an iron grip on information regarding their cosmonauts. What the world knew was carefully curated, sanitized for public consumption. What the world did not know would remain buried in classified archives for decades. Among the ghost stories that haunted the halls of Baikonur Cosmodrome, none was more chilling than the case of Cosmonaut Zero. The story begins not with rockets or launch pads, but with silence. In the spring of 1965, families in the closed city of Zvyozny began receiving visits from officials bearing folders thick with documentation. These were not condolence visits, these were erasure protocols. Valentina Dmitrievna Volkov had been married to a man whose name she was instructed to forget. Her husband, Senior Lieutenant Alexander Nikolaevich Volkov, had been selected for the Soviet space program in 1962. By 1965, according to the officials who visited her modest apartment on Gagarin Street, he had never existed at all. The paperwork was thorough. Birth certificates were amended. Military records were transferred to archives that technically did not exist. Wedding photographs were collected for what officials termed state security purposes. Valentina was relocated to Tomsk with a new identity and a pension that would arrive monthly without explanation for the next 43 years. But Valentina was not alone in her enforced amnesia. Across the closed cities that supported the Soviet space program, similar visits occurred throughout the spring and summer of 1965. In Plesetsk, the family of flight engineer Igor Pavlovich Smirnov received identical treatment. In Kapustin Yar, the parents of test pilot Dmitry Sergeyevich Petrov were relocated to Novosibirsk with new papers and strict instructions never to discuss their son's career. According to fragmentary records that would surface decades later, 12 men had been selected for a program that officially never existed. Their designation in internal documents was simply Grupa Nol, Group Zero. Their mission parameters remain classified to this day. What is known comes from sources that the Soviet state could not entirely control. Father Sergei Antonov, who served the Orthodox community in Zvyozny from 1961 to 1968, maintained careful records of births, deaths, and disappearances among his parishioners. His handwritten logs, discovered in 1987 during renovations of the Church of the Ascension, contained entries that contradicted official records. Under the date April 14, 1965, Father Sergei wrote, 12 families request prayers for the dead. No bodies, no graves, only silence from Moscow. The entries that followed grew increasingly cryptic. By June, Father Sergei was documenting what he termed the walking wounded, family members who had not died but had become something else. Wives who spoke to walls as if their husbands were there. Children who refused to acknowledge that their fathers had ever existed. The technical specifications of what happened to Group Zero would remain hidden until a series of documents surfaced in 1968. These papers, found in the personal effects of Dr. Mikhail Ivanovich Kozlov after his death from what was officially recorded as a heart attack, painted a picture that challenged everything the world thought it knew about Soviet space capabilities. Dr. Kozlov had served as chief medical examiner for the Baikonur facility from 1963 until his death. His private notes, written in a mixture of Russian and medical Latin, described 12 individuals who had undergone what he termed complete physiological disconnection during a mission that lasted exactly 47 minutes and 32 seconds. The mission itself appears to have been a test of experimental life support systems designed for extended deep space travel. Unlike previous Soviet flights, which maintained constant radio contact with ground control, Group Zero was launched with communication systems that would activate only upon re-entry. The silence during their orbital period was intentional, part of testing psychological isolation protocols for future missions to Mars. But Group Zero never came back. The capsule returned. Recovery teams found it exactly where trajectory calculations predicted, in the steppes north of Karaganda. The heat shield showed normal re-entry damage. The parachute systems had deployed correctly. The landing site showed no signs of impact trauma beyond what was expected for a standard recovery operation. Inside the capsule, 12 men sat in their acceleration couches with their eyes open. They were breathing, their hearts were beating. Medical examinations showed normal vital signs across all parameters, but when flight surgeons spoke to them, they did not respond. When lights were shined in their eyes, their pupils reacted normally, but they showed no awareness of the stimulation. They appeared to be looking at something that was not there. Dr. Kozlov's notes described the next phase of what became known internally as the observation period. The 12 men were transferred to a medical facility within the Baikonur complex, where they were monitored continuously for 72 hours. They required no food or water. They did not sleep. They did not move, unless moved by others. When positioned in front of windows, they would stand for hours looking upward at the sky. On the 4th day, they began to change. The changes were subtle at first. Flight engineer Smirnov began moving his lips as if speaking, but no sound emerged. Test pilot Petrov started making precise mathematical calculations in the air with his index finger, solving equations that monitoring scientists could not follow. Senior Lieutenant Volkov began to orient himself toward magnetic north with the precision of a compass needle. By the end of the first week, all 12 men were exhibiting what Dr. Kozlov termed synchronized behavioral patterns. They would move in unison, as if responding to commands that only they could hear. They would turn their heads in perfect coordination to track objects that were not visible to anyone else in the room. The decision to implement the erasure protocol came directly from Moscow on the 15th day of observation. Orders arrived with the morning communications package. All records of Group Zero were to be transferred to the highest classification levels. The men themselves were to be transferred to a facility that did not appear on any official maps. But first, their families had to be dealt with. The process was methodical. Each family received a visit from a team of 3 officials, one from the Ministry of Defense, one from the Committee for State Security, and one whose affiliation was never specified. The families were informed that their loved ones had been reassigned to positions that required complete secrecy for national security reasons. They would be relocated with new identities and provided with comfortable pensions. In exchange, they would sign documents acknowledging that certain people had never existed. Most families complied. The alternative, while never explicitly stated, was understood to involve consequences that extended far beyond simple relocation. Valentina Volkov signed her papers on April 23, 1965. Her new documents identified her as Valentina Dmitrievna Novikova, widow of a factory foreman who had died in an industrial accident. Her marriage certificate to Alexander Volkov was replaced with documentation of a marriage to Ivan Sergeyevich Novikov, who had conveniently died 6 months before her relocation. The apartment she left behind on Gagarin Street was stripped of everything that might indicate who had lived there. New residents were moved in within 48 hours. The building superintendent was instructed to report that the apartment had been vacant since the previous winter. Similar procedures were followed for the other 11 families. By the end of May 1965, Group Zero had been successfully erased from the official record. Their names appeared in no documents. Their photographs existed in no archives. The mission they had flown had never happened. But erasure of the official record did not address the problem of the 12 men themselves. The facility where they were transferred existed in a region of Kazakhstan that appeared on no maps distributed outside the Ministry of Defense. Local designation Research Station 47 occupied a complex of underground bunkers constructed during the early 1950s as part of Soviet biological weapons research. By 1965, the facility had been repurposed for what internal documents referred to as special population containment. Dr. Elizabeth Mikhailovna Rostova served as the facility's chief psychiatric evaluator from 1964 until her retirement in 1971. Her personal journals, recovered from her apartment in Leningrad after her death in 1993, provide the only detailed account of Group Zero's final years. According to Dr. Rostova's entries, the 12 men adapted quickly to their underground environment. They required minimal supervision. They ate when food was provided, but showed no distress when meals were delayed. They slept in shifts, with 4 men remaining awake at all times in a pattern that rotated with mathematical precision every 6 hours and 47 minutes. They never spoke, but Dr. Rostova noted that they appeared to communicate through what she described as synchronized positioning. When one man moved to a different location within their shared living space, the others would adjust their positions accordingly, maintaining specific geometric relationships that Dr. Rostova could not decode. More disturbing was their apparent awareness of events occurring far beyond the facility. On October 27, 1965, all 12 men simultaneously oriented themselves toward the southwest and remained in that position for exactly 9 minutes and 37 seconds. Later investigation revealed that this corresponded precisely to the launch window for Luna 8 from Baikonur, over 400 kilometers away. On March 16, 1966, the men exhibited what Dr. Rostova termed extreme agitation response. They moved constantly for 37 minutes, pacing in complex patterns that seemed to follow mathematical formulas. Their heart rates, monitored continuously, spiked to dangerous levels before returning to normal exactly at noon. That evening, facility administrators received notification that Gemini 8 had experienced critical systems failures during its mission, requiring emergency procedures that lasted 37 minutes. Dr. Rostova's journals document similar responses to space-related events throughout 1966 and 1967. The men seemed to possess awareness of every launch, every orbit, every successful landing, and every catastrophic failure. They reacted to Soviet missions and American missions with equal intensity, as if the distinction between competing space programs was meaningless to them. The behavioral changes accelerated during the final months of 1967. Beginning in October, the men started spending increasing amounts of time staring at the facility's ceiling, which was reinforced concrete nearly 3 meters thick. They would stand in formation, 12 men arranged in a precise circle, looking upward for hours without moving. When facility staff attempted to break these formations, the men would reform them within minutes. Dr. Rostova noted that during these episodes, electronic equipment in the facility experienced interference that technicians could not explain. Radio communications became unreliable. Electrical systems fluctuated without apparent cause. Medical monitoring devices recorded anomalous readings that suggested the presence of electromagnetic fields that should not have existed underground. On December 7, 1967, all 12 men stopped eating. They continued to drink water when it was provided, but they refused all solid food. Medical examinations showed no signs of illness or physical distress. Their body weight remained stable. Blood tests revealed no nutritional deficiencies. According to every measurable parameter, they appeared to be sustaining themselves through unknown means. The final entry in Dr. Rostova's journals is dated January 11th, 1968. On that morning, facility staff conducting routine checks discovered that the men's quarters were empty. The door had not been opened. The security system showed no indication of breach. The men had simply vanished from a sealed underground chamber. Searches of the facility revealed no trace of their presence. The rooms they had occupied showed no signs of forced entry or exit. The concrete walls and floors displayed no evidence of damage or alteration. Video surveillance systems, which had monitored the quarters continuously, showed 12 men present at 2300 hours and empty rooms at 2330. The official investigation concluded that the men had never existed. Files were amended to indicate that Research Station 47 had been used exclusively for mineral extraction surveys during the period in question. Dr. Rostova was transferred to a civilian hospital in Leningrad, where she worked in pediatric medicine until her retirement. The families, who had been relocated in 1965, continued to receive their monthly pensions. Valentina Novikova lived quietly in Tomsk until her death in 2008. Igor Smirnov's parents remained in Novosibirsk until their deaths in the 1980s. None ever spoke publicly about their lost relatives, but silence did not mean the story ended. In 1969, amateur radio operators in several countries began reporting anomalous transmissions on frequencies previously used for Soviet space communications. The signals consisted of mathematical sequences that followed patterns similar to navigation calculations used in orbital mechanics. The transmissions occurred at regular intervals, every 6 hours and 47 minutes. Official investigations by both Soviet and American authorities found no terrestrial source for these signals. The mathematical content was analyzed by experts who confirmed that the sequences represented valid orbital calculations, but for trajectories that extended far beyond Earth's gravity well. The calculations appeared to describe paths through deep space that would take decades to complete. The transmissions continued until 1973, when they stopped as abruptly as they had begun. Modern analysis of archived recordings has revealed additional layers of complexity in these signals. Embedded within the mathematical sequences were subtle variations that, when decoded using computer systems not available in the 1960s, reveal personal information about the 12 men who comprised Group Zero. Names, birth dates, family members, childhood memories, details that had been erased from official records, were somehow preserved in radio transmissions originating from unknown locations in space. Dr. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, currently Professor of Aerospace Engineering at MIT, published a comprehensive analysis of these signals in 2006. Her research, funded by a grant that originated from an anonymous source, concluded that the transmissions represented organized communication from sources exhibiting detailed knowledge of Soviet space program participants who have no official record of existence. Dr. Morrison's work included biographical reconstructions of all 12 men, based entirely on information extracted from the signal analysis. These reconstructions match details found in Father Sergei's handwritten logs and Dr. Rostova's personal journals with accuracy that could not be explained through coincidence. More recently, the amateur radio community has documented the return of similar transmissions. Beginning in 2015, signals matching the mathematical patterns from the 1970s have been detected on multiple frequencies. The calculations now describe trajectories extending beyond the solar system towards star systems that current technology could not reach for thousands of years. The signals continue to this day. They arrive every 6 hours and 47 minutes, carrying navigation data for journeys that span distances measured in light years. Radio astronomy teams at several universities have attempted to triangulate the source of these transmissions, but have found them to originate from regions of space where no artificial objects should exist. In 2018, Dr. Morrison published a follow-up paper analyzing the most recent signal content. Her findings suggested that the transmissions contained not only navigation data, but also what she termed experiential records, detailed descriptions of environments and phenomena that could not be observed from Earth. These descriptions included data about cosmic radiation levels in interstellar space, gravitational effects of distant stellar objects, and temperature variations in regions far beyond the influence of our solar system. The information was consistently accurate when compared to data from unmanned space probes, but it described locations that no Earth-based technology had ever reached. The implications of Dr. Morrison's research have been quietly discussed in classified briefings held for space program administrators in multiple countries. While no official position has been taken, internal documents obtained through Freedom of Information requests suggest that several agencies are actively monitoring these transmissions for intelligence value. The most recent development occurred in 2023, when the European Space Agency detected signals containing what appeared to be real-time updates about conditions near Proxima Centauri, the closest star to our solar system. The data included precise measurements of stellar activity and planetary characteristics that matched independent observations made by the James Webb Space Telescope. According to sources within the scientific community who spoke on condition of anonymity, these transmissions have provided advance warning of solar storm activity, predicted asteroid trajectories with unprecedented accuracy, and delivered navigation data that has improved the efficiency of several robotic space missions. But the most disturbing aspect of the ongoing signals is not their technical content. It is the personal messages that have begun appearing within the mathematical sequences. Starting in 2024, signal analysis has revealed embedded text that appears to be directed toward Earth. These messages contain references to family members who died decades ago, descriptions of childhood memories from pre-revolutionary Russia, and expressions of longing for places that no longer exist. One message, detected in March 2024, contained a complete recitation of a lullaby that Valentina Volkov had sung to her infant daughter before her husband's disappearance. The daughter, now in her 60s and living under her mother's assumed identity, had never told anyone about that lullaby. Another message, received in July 2024, included detailed descriptions of the interior of the Church of the Ascension in Zvyozhny, including the location of Father Sergei's hidden journals years before they were officially discovered. The description was accurate down to the specific boards under which the documents had been concealed. Dr. Morrison's most recent analysis suggests that the sources of these transmissions maintain awareness of events occurring on Earth, despite being located at distances that should make such awareness impossible. The signals appear to be generated by entities who possess intimate knowledge of people and places that were officially erased from history over 50 years ago. Current radio astronomy protocols include continuous monitoring of these transmissions under programs that do not appear in public funding documents. The data collected is shared between research institutions through channels that bypass normal academic publishing procedures. What began as a classified Soviet space program has evolved into something that challenges fundamental assumptions about human consciousness, communication across cosmic distances, and the permanence of death itself. The 12 men of Group Zero, appear to have achieved a form of existence that extends far beyond the biological limitations that define human experience. Their families, relocated and renamed, lived their remaining years carrying secrets they were forbidden to share. Their children grew up with gaps in family history that could never be explained. Their grandchildren now live in a world where their ancestors may be sending messages from the depths of interstellar space. The signals continue. Every 6 hours and 47 minutes, mathematical sequences arrive containing navigation data for journeys that began over 50 years ago and may continue for millennia. Within those calculations are embedded the preserved memories of 12 men who officially never existed, but who appear to have achieved a form of immortality that extends across the cosmos. Recent developments suggest that this story is far from over. In October 2024, signals were detected containing what appeared to be technical specifications for propulsion systems that exceed current human understanding. These specifications have been quietly shared with research teams working on advanced spacecraft design, leading to breakthroughs that have not been publicly attributed to their actual source. The men of Group Zero, disappeared from official records but preserved in radio waves that traverse the galaxy, continue to contribute to human space exploration from their impossible positions among the stars. Their voices, transformed into mathematical poetry, carry across the void messages that suggest consciousness can survive the destruction of the body and journey to distances that dwarf human imagination. And somewhere in that vast darkness, 12 men who should have returned to Earth in 1965 continue their mission, reporting back from the frontier of human experience through signals that arrive with the punctuality of heartbeats, reminding us that some disappearances are not endings, but transformations into something that defies every limitation we thought we understood about the nature of existence itself. The transmissions that began in 1969 have never stopped. They arrive from coordinates that place them beyond the edge of the solar system, carrying information that has advanced human understanding of space while simultaneously challenging everything we thought we knew about the fate of those who venture too far into the unknown. And in the silence between those signals, in the 47-minute gaps that separate each mathematical transmission, lies a question that remains unanswered. What happened during those final moments before Group Zero vanished from their sealed chamber? And where exactly are they sending these messages from as they continue their eternal journey through the endless night between stars? The archives remain classified. The families have kept their secrets, but the signals continue to arrive, bearing witness to a mission that officially never began, and carrying voices from places that should be empty, reminding us that some stories refuse to end, even when every attempt has been made to erase them from memory and history alike. The most recent intercepted transmission, received on November 15, 2024, contained a message that differed from all previous communications. Instead of mathematical sequences or navigation data, the signal carried what appeared to be a countdown sequence in Russian, transmitted in Morse code patterns that matched the personal signature of Senior Lieutenant Alexander Nikolaevich Volkov. The countdown reached zero at precisely 11:47 Moscow time on November 23, 2024. At that moment, radio telescopes around the world detected a massive burst of coordinated signals originating from 12 distinct points in deep space, each separated by distances of several light years. The final transmission lasted exactly 47 minutes and 32 seconds, the same duration as Group Zero's original mission in 1965. When the signals ended, the frequencies they had occupied for nearly 60 years fell silent. Dr. Morrison's analysis of this final communication revealed embedded personal messages to the families who had been relocated and renamed decades earlier. Valentina Novikova received word of her husband's love, transmitted across impossible distances. Igor Smirnov's elderly sister learned that her brother remembered the songs she had sung during their childhood in Arkhangelsk. Each family member who still lived received confirmation that their loved ones had never truly disappeared, but had instead become something that could traverse the cosmos while maintaining the connections that defined their humanity. The silence that followed this final transmission has persisted for exactly 6 months. No further signals have been detected on any frequency previously used by Group Zero. Radio astronomy teams continue their monitoring protocols, but the mathematical voices that had spoken from the void for nearly 60 years appear to have completed whatever mission they had been pursuing in the darkness between stars. In the closed archives of facilities that officially never existed, files remain sealed that might explain what happened to 12 men who ventured beyond the boundaries of human experience and discovered that consciousness could survive the journey to places where no living thing should be able to exist. These files may contain answers to questions about the nature of awareness, the persistence of identity across cosmic distances, and the possibility that some disappearances represent transformations into forms of existence that current science cannot comprehend. But perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Perhaps the silence that now occupies those frequencies carries its own message, that Group Zero has finally completed their impossible journey and found whatever they were seeking in the vast emptiness that lies beyond the edge of human understanding. The families have kept their secrets, the archives remain classified, the signals have stopped arriving. But on clear nights, when amateur radio operators scan the frequencies that once carried voices from the deep, they sometimes report hearing something that might be an echo, a whisper of mathematical poetry that suggests the 12 men of Group Zero achieved exactly what they were meant to achieve when they disappeared from a sealed chamber in 1968 and emerged somewhere among the stars where distance and time hold different meanings than they do on Earth. And in that silence, perhaps, lies the final answer to what happens when human consciousness encounters the infinite darkness and discovers that some journeys have no end, only transformations into something that defies every limitation we thought we understood about the boundaries between the possible and the impossible, between presence and absence, between here and somewhere so far away that it might as well be everywhere at once. The case of Cosmonaut Zero officially never happened, but for nearly 60 years, the universe itself bore witness to their continuing existence, broadcasting mathematical proof that some disappearances are not losses, but discoveries of paths that lead beyond the reach of gravity, beyond the influence of time, and beyond the final frontier where 12 men learned that the cosmos is vast enough to contain forms of consciousness that can survive any distance and endure any transformation while remaining fundamentally, eternally human.